Hello, welcome to my channel. I made this video for my grade 5 students who right now they have to learn from home. Okay, alright, so before we start, let me kind of introduce you guys the chapter, the topic that we're going to talk today. We're going to talk about feudalism. Yeah. Now, feudalism is a very confusing word. If I have to summarize the definition, feudalism it means a governmental system that based on the accountability or allegiance to one and another between three estates or three classes. I will talk about these classes later. It was being modeled after the biblical idea of a covenantal, like between God and Abraham. All right, so yeah, that is like the definition of like feudalism. There's no easy way for me to explain it to you guys, but I think whenever you heard the word of feudalism, it's always being associated with the Middle Ages or the medieval, the medieval age. Okay, the medieval. When we talk about like Middle Ages, probably this is like what you have in your mind: castles, like knight in the shining armor, violence, and then kind of like what the peasants. And they live in like what they live in the town, or they live in the village, and then if they have a small town, the town will be kind of cramped, and then inside of like the castle wall, the road is dirty and muddy, and then like people, they would just like throw away their things from their house into the street, which is kind of like pretty, dirty and dark. Yeah, and sometimes like Middle Ages is being described as a Dark Ages, but is it really that dark? Well, perhaps. Now, where should I start with the feudalism? Now, feudalism, as I said earlier, is a system of a government. Now, I'm going to begin with how it become a popular thing, how it become exists, how it exists. This is the reason like why. Okay. So first, you need to remember like what happened with the Roman after the fall of the Roman Empire. Now, as Western Europe was being like what the central of authority and everything was being torn down by this what so-called the barbarians, according to the Romans. Yeah. And the central government is no longer exists. The emperor is no longer exists. Even though, even one of the Roman emperor was like was kidnapped by the barbarian king. But life must go on, and authority must exist, and then central government must exist. Now, fast forward the story a little bit. Yes, probably during this time, after the fall of the Roman Empire, what happened with this place? What happened with the people is like they're experiencing like what we call a dark age, because there's no sense of security, there's no sense of like unity, and then everything is just full of uncertainty. Okay, you are always worried that your town or your city or you that you might be attacked by some wild raiders. Okay. So, and that things kind of like changed when Charlemagne built his empire. Okay, he united most of the Western, what we know now as a Western Europe. He unified them all under his reign, under his rulership as an emperor. And in fact, he was being proclaimed as the as the Holy Roman Emperor. The idea is that he can restore the orderliness, he can restore the sovereignties of what used to be known as the Roman Empire. Yeah, but by the way, Charlemagne, he's not a Roman. You see, he's Frankish. He's from Frankish kingdom, and so he's kind of like Germanic. Yeah, so he's not even a Roman. Anyway, so that happens. That was a cool thing. That was a good thing that Charlemagne did. He created this kind of like stability. Yeah. He reignited the culture. During his time, he kind of like he emphasized on the education. He make sure all of this kind of like the Latin copies of the books are being like diligently being copied by the monks and then well preserved in the library. And he even kind of like he built a lot of like magnificent building. It's kind of like this architectures, we call it as the Romanesque. Okay, the Romanesque. We will talk about it next time in the chapter cathedral. But things goes bad. Things went down after his death. Yeah, his empire was divided into three by his three grandsons. Okay, Charles the Bald, Lothair, and also Louis. Okay, Louis the German. Yeah, Louis the German. So that's what happened, and then now, and to make things worse, as these three grandson of Charlemagne, they were not capable. They were not as good as their grandpa. So what happened is, it was kind of like chaotic, and then there's no kind of like strong leadership. That what happens. To make things worse, at this moment, now this is around 800-ish, okay, 800 AD. Vikings attack. The Vikings start to invading the coastline from the north. The Islams, they also like expanding their their conquest all the way from the south, from Spain. Okay, Iberian Peninsula is overwhelmed, okay, by the Muslims. Also from the east, Western Europe was being attacked by a new group of warrior tribe people known as the Magyars, or known also as the Hungarians. As the lack of leadership, lack of strong authority cannot create this kind of like sense of security for the people and for the the landowners and everything, they start to develop this kind of like governmental system, as I said earlier, by the name of like feudalism. So basically, it revolves around a relationship between the lord, which is usually the one who have the land, okay, and also the vassals, which is usually they will pledge their allegiance, or they will kind of like they will make a vow, they will kind of like handshake, something like that, covenant with the lord, that they will have a mutual benefit. Yeah, for the lords, they will provide land, so the vassals can produce kind of like crops and wealth from that land, whatever that they want to do with that land. And in return, usually, the vassals are the fighters. They are people who are good in fighting. They are used to be like, they use basically they're soldiers, they're warriors. They know how to fight. So you know what they do? They will like offer their service to protect. They will offer their service to fight in the war, to protect what? To protect their master, the lords. Yeah, lord and vassals. But actually, it's more complicated than that. Okay, of course, history hates simplicity. Now, next part, as I said earlier, about the three estates or the three classes in the feudalism society. Oh, by the way, before we talk furthermore, of course, the word feudalism is not exclusively only for to describing like the society of the Western Europe around that time, around 800 until 1400. Of course, feudalism is being applied by also other nations, other civilizations. For example, like you heard about Japan, yeah, the shogun and also the samurai. They also have their own feudalism. Yeah. Now, as for let's go back to the Western Europe. Now, feudalism, it's technically, I'm gonna put like chart by now. I'm gonna put chart to make things more simple. Feudalism is divided into three classes. The church. Okay, the first class is the church. The second class is the nobles. And the third class is the commoners, eh? The commoners. Now, to make things kind of like more simple, I'll kind of like, the church is the, let's just say, those who pray. Those who pray are, belongs to the church. And then the nobles are those who fight. Yeah, those who fight. And last but not least, the commoners, well, those who work. Those who pray, those who fight, those who work. Yeah, the church, the nobles, and also the commoners. Okay, now let's dive into like one by one. Let's just talk first about the church. Now, when I'm talking about the church, of course, not just like the church building per se, but the church is the it's more on the clergy. Okay, the people who work for the church, the people who dedicate their life for the work of God. Okay, they have a hierarchy. They will have a ranks. Okay. The highest authority in the church itself, or the layman, or the clergy, is, of course, number one is the Pope. Pope is considered even up to now. Pope is considered to be as the vicar of Christ. Okay, what does it mean? That means like Pope is the representative of Christ on earth. Okay, they have a theory. We call it as a Petrine theory. I am not going to explain it now, but I'm going to explain it next time. Okay, Petrine theory. So that is the claim that the Pope had as Pope has as the vicar of Christ, or the representative of Christ on earth. So of course they are the authority. They are the highest authority in the church. Okay, in the church official rank. Now, second one is the bishop. Okay, the bishop. Now you remember the story, right? Augustine is the bishop of Hippo. Now, bishop is usually is a very influential kind of like church leader. He will be in charge of several kind of like parish or several local churches. He will have a quite huge number of like territory under his command, under his authority. The bishop can be wealthy somehow over the times, and yes, the bishop, their opinions, their voice can somehow have a strong influence towards the local rulers, like whatever they say, and then yeah, the rulers have to consider like what they say. Yeah, if you remember like story of like Saint Augustine, right? Well, at the time, a lot of people listen to him and respect him, even the non-Christians. Now, next, the third one, the third hierarchy in that church, we still talk about the church, is we call it as the parish priest. Okay, parish priest. Now, the parish priest is basically the local priest. These are the low rank kind of like church officials that their job is to deliver the mass, the mass, and then like leading the congregation, leading the people to attending the church. Okay, attending the church, which is they will have a rituals, and this priest is the one who administer the mass to the people. If they're sick, then the priest will pray for them. Okay, if they need if they want to baptize their baby, then this priest is the one who will baptize the baby. If they want to confess their sin, then this priest is the one who offer the confessions. Okay, the confession rite. And not just other than the priest, also at this kind of like, probably it's a little bit outside, but yeah, for the sake of this kind of like information, we also known as the monks in the monastery. Now the monks are quite like kind of independent in this in this hierarchy, somehow quite independent. Now these monks are usually they are band together as a order. We call it as an order, and then they will live in the monastery. Okay, we talk about that one when we talk about Saint Benedict. Yeah, monasticism. Now they're independent. They provide their own meal. They grow their own crops, and they work, and they will earn like somehow they will trade with the market, and then like, so they are very kind of like self-independent. And then what would they do is they will also ministry to the people. Like they build hospital, they offer educations for the people. Yeah. So those are the monks. Oh, and also the cool things about the monks is they copy the Latin books. Okay, they preserve the books. Without this monk, without this monastery, then the Europe will really end up in dark age. And now the second estate or the second class. So you will love this one, especially the boys. Yeah, like right. Now we will talk about the nobles. Yeah, the nobles. Now these are those who fight. Those who fight. Yeah, whenever you watch a Disney movie or whenever you watch a movie, like, and then there's this kind of like a scene that the nobles they're wearing fancy clothes, they're eating a special meal. Okay, they have a party in a kind of like a whole room, and then like it's quite bright, but it's not that bright. And then like this class are they know how to fight. I mean, what I'm trying to say is they will get all of those kind of like luxury. They will get all of this kind of like wealth because of the expertise that they have, which is fighting. Between the nobles and the knights, there's a thin line there, which is sometimes is blurred. It's very hard to describe. Now these are kind of like specialized warrior. They learn, they train themselves how to fight, how to become a better warrior since they were a child, since they were a kid. They practice as a squire as years go by, and then they become a knight. There's this kind of like big misconception that happens among in the world, that you will probably thinking like there are plenty of knights during the Middle Ages, but actually the answer is no. Okay, being a knight is a very kind of like expensive. It's very horse is expensive, of course food is expensive, and then armors, equipment, and also sword, weaponries and everything, that is expensive. And don't forget that you have to also you have to train the squire. So, and then in order for you to have those in order for you to become an excellent warriors, that requires all of those kind of like fancy toys, you need a lot of wealth. Now that's why their master, their lords, usually their kings, okay, offer them lands, okay, a huge amount of lands, so they can they can make money out of it. but cannot sell the land, okay. Whatever they want to do, they rent the place, or they kind of like what, they will tell the commoners, later on we talk about commoners, to work for the field, and then like the field produce fruit, and the fruit, of course, yeah, for them. I did mention about the king, and I forgot to mention about the king. Okay, now let's talk about the hierarchy, okay, in the nobles. The highest of all is like the emperor. Like Charlemagne is the emperor, yeah? Charlemagne, for example, is an emperor. And of course, after that, there will be another emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, emperor is the highest. He will sovereign over a huge territory, over several kingdoms. But then again, not always, the emperor is not always stronger than the king sometimes. I know it's a bit confusing. And the emperor is not always more wealthier than their kings. So I know it's a bit confusing. Yeah, but that's just, yeah, alright. So the emperor anyway is the highest. Now under the emperor is the kings. Yeah. Now these kings, they pledge their loyalty. They kind of like what, they have a covenant with the emperors. But sometimes the kings, they decided not to support the emperor. But yeah, that's okay, and that's kind of like fine too. As I said earlier, sometimes the king can be like more powerful than the emperor. Yeah. So the kings are the local rulers that usually they will have a huge piece of land. Usually the way he will need support, he will need some protection, and that where he get it from his vassals. Now the vassals are, like as I said earlier, usually the knights, the people who know how to fight. In return, the kings will provide like what? Will provide lands for these knights. Feudalism is about like what? The lord and the vassals. Okay, the lord and the vassals. The lord can be the king. The lord can be the emperor. If the lord is the king, that means the vassal is the knights. Yeah, because the knights, they have to pledge their loyalty to the king. Okay, in return, the king will like what? Will provide the land for the knights to live. Yeah. So there you go. That is like the mutual relationship between the nobles and the, you know, in the nobles. Now, of course, let me add it one more thing. These people who belong to this class, they can like, you know, they can move up and down. Sometimes the knight, they can become a king, yeah. Sometimes the king, they can become an emperor, and then at the same, sometimes the king, they also king slash knight. Okay, it happens too. It's a very dynamic. Okay, they can move up and down, but it will be different than the third one. Okay, now ready. The third one is we talk about the third estate is we talk about the commoners. Okay, now these are the people, those who work, which is they dedicate their life most of the time to work. Okay, now let's life as a commoner can be harsh. Okay, can be very kind of like hard because you have to work from morning till evening. But the good thing is, like, you know, one thing that probably information that you need to know, somehow the world, Europe at that time, Western Europe, they experienced what we call as a long period of a summer. Not summer, that's not the way though. What I'm trying to say, the temperatures, the temperature with the climate at that time is slightly a little bit warmer. So what does that mean? That means the farm produce more food than normal time, than average. It happens like kind of like, you know, for several years, for several kind of like 100 years. So what does it mean? More food to produce, of course, more human population. Okay, and now these are the commoners who are the commoners are the people who work for the lords. These are the people who works for the church. Now, they are also have a several, I don't say it is a kind of ranks, but several classification within the commoners itself. Let's dive into one by one, okay. First, the peasants. What you have in your mind is like, you know, that kind of move from the movies, right? Okay, like angry peasants, like with the pitchfork. Alright, so now, the peasants, these are people who work for the farm. That usually belongs to the kings. But sometimes the farm, they work also for their own land. I mean, for their own, the community land that belongs to the village. Okay, these are the peasants. Of course, they have to serve, and in return, the masters usually, which is the lord, will have to protect them. Yeah, they cannot be harmed. They cannot be harmed by the nobles. See again between the lord and the vassals relationship. Yeah. Now, next is the merchants. Now the merchants these are people who are traveling around. Okay, of course, merchants, the word merchant itself is basically You get the goods at the cheapest price, and after that you will sell it somewhere to get to make a profit. Okay, and these are the merchants who travel back and forth from one town to another town, from one community to another community to sell things, to sell stuff. The third one is we call it as a serf. Okay, the serf. Now, when we talk about the serf, it's kind of a bit complicated. Just imagine slave, but not slave. Confused? Yeah, me too. Serf are kind of like they are tied to the land. They are tied to the nobles, to their masters. They cannot go anywhere without the permission. They cannot somehow changing their class. And if you are born as a serf, then your child will be a serf. Then your grandchild will be a serf. Then your grandpa must be a serf. Okay, well, not always though, but yeah, that's how is it. Okay, it's kind of like close to slave, but not quite. Yeah, it's what I'm trying to say. The peasants are having more better kind of like chances to for freedom. The idea of feudalism is to create stability, is to create security for the Middle Ages society, because the idea of the feudalism is there is this what we call the accountability. Okay, the accountability. So everybody's accountability to each other's. Action of one person will affect the whole community. So therefore, it was being expected that everybody, they're doing their job, they're doing their role. Those who are praying, those who are fight, those who are work, they have to do their job so they can create this kind of stability. They can create this kind of fully functional society. Everybody is expected. Now, it's the idea that they got from the Bible, as I said earlier in the beginning of the classroom. It's the idea when God created the earth, God did not create human as a slave. God did not create human as a robot, as a servant. No, God created human as a partner. Okay, as a partner, as a living image of God, to take care of the garden, to take care of the world. But then, as the story itself revealed, as the natures of human nature itself is being described in the Bible, okay, there's something wrong with our heart. This kind of feudalism doesn't work. The theory is good, but then again, it doesn't work somehow at that time, because what happened is they are fighting, they are arguing, they're being greedy, they are kind of conquering one another. They're trampling the weak. Okay, they are kind of what's the word for that one? I lost the word. Bullying the weak, bullying the peasants. The knights sometimes they're bullying the peasants. The peasants they have nothing to say, they have nothing to do with. They cannot fight about it, and then they say they're the one who in the loose ends. Okay, and even the church officials at that time, they end up being corrupted. They become greedy, and then they become what? They start to accumulating wealth that they don't deserve it. Okay, and they will misuse the power. So it was a kind of it was messy. Probably that is probably give an idea why people sometimes think the Middle Ages as the Dark Age. Yeah, but anyway, again, the word feudalism is something that the historian labeled them. Okay, of course, you don't imagine everybody who lived during 800 to the year 800 until 1500, they wake up in the morning and say, welcome, this is what? This is feudalism age. I can feel it somehow. Smells like manure. No, they don't realize it. We labeled them, okay? Now, whenever we think about the feudalism, here, I'm going to show you guys the chart, okay? This is what we think right now. A lot of people think this is this, yeah? Looks like kind of triangle. Look at that. And we just the king on top of it. And then the peasants, and then sorry, the knights, and then the vassals. Well, actually, they're supposed to be the church official here, but at the lowest rank is the peasants. Yeah, this is what we imagine. Now, what if I'm kind of telling you, okay, the feudalism is supposed to be like this? Yeah, as you look right now in this kind of chart. Okay, I don't know how I'm gonna put this chart in the video, but there you go. Yeah, the kingdoms, the families, the church, the individual person, the community, your work, your job, your role, everything, yeah? Everything that your life, what you are doing, your actions and your heart and your life, the way you're kind of journey in your life, everything must be centered into the Christ and His Word. So that is the feudalism should be, yeah? Because there's this accountability. If you can be accountable with Christ in your heart and His Word, then you are also can be accountable with one and another. Alright? So that is my lessons about feudalism. And if you think about it, do you also see like, how this kind of like, this idea of a covenantal can be somehow applicable in the modern times, in the modern society? Alright, there you go. Thank you class for watching. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.